The air crackled with an almost tangible tension, as if the very atmosphere was charged with electricity. It was thick with the scent of sandalwood and fear, a potent mix that seemed to seep into the very stones of the ancient temple. Priya knelt before the ancient altar, her fingers tracing the worn grooves of the Sanskrit inscription. Tonight was the night she had been preparing for her entire life. The night of the final eclipse, a celestial event that would determine the fate of many. The night she faced her destiny, a destiny written in the stars and etched in the annals of time.
Ready, Priya? The question hung in the air, heavy with expectation.
Meera, her mentor, placed a hand on her shoulder, her eyes filled with a mixture of pride and concern. Her touch was firm, reassuring, a silent promise that she would not face this alone.
For this I was born. Priya's voice was steady, filled with a resolve that belied her years.
Priya murmured, her words a quiet affirmation of her purpose. Clutching the silver dagger at her hip, its weight a comforting reminder of her mission. Dev, their stoic protector, stood guard at the entrance to the temple, his presence a silent sentinel against the encroaching darkness. His eyes, usually warm and kind, were now hard, focused, reflecting the gravity of the moment. He nodded, a silent acknowledgement of the gravity of their task, his resolve unwavering. The chanting reached a crescendo, the ancient words echoing off the stone walls, filling the space with an almost palpable energy. Flames leaped higher from the sacred fire, casting flickering shadows that danced across the temple walls, as if the spirits themselves were watching. Priya closed her eyes, her heart pounding against her ribs. This was it, the moment of truth. There was no turning back. The path was set, and she would walk it with unwavering determination. A guttural growl ripped through the night, silencing the chanting. The air grew thick with an ominous presence, as if the very essence of the night was holding its breath. The flames in the braziers guttered, casting grotesque shapes on the walls as a wave of palpable darkness swept through the temple. Priya's eyes flew open, her heart pounding in her chest as she sensed the shift in the atmosphere. From the heart of the eclipse-shadowed moon, a figure began to materialize. It was as if the shadows themselves were giving birth to a new entity, one that carried the weight of ancient curses and forgotten nightmares. It was humanoid in form, yet grotesquely elongated, its limbs twisted and gnarled like ancient tree roots. Each movement it made seemed to defy the natural order, as if it was a creature born from the very fabric of darkness. Its skin shifted between the ashen grey of death and the deep, pulsating purple of the eclipsed moon. The Warden. A being of pure malevolence, its presence alone was enough to instill fear in the bravest of hearts. "You dare to defy me?" The words echoed through the temple, a challenge that seemed to reverberate through the very stones. The Warden boomed, its voice a grating rasp that seemed to claw at the edges of Priya's sanity. Each word it spoke felt like a dagger, piercing through the fragile veil of reality. It took a step towards them, and the very air around it crackled with malevolent energy. The ground seemed to tremble under its weight, as if the earth itself was recoiling from its presence. Priya felt a tremor run through Meera. The fear was palpable, a shared dread that bound them together in that moment of terror. Dev tightened his grip on his staff, the talisman at its end glowing with an ethereal light. It was their only hope, a beacon in the encroaching darkness. They were outmatched, outgunned, and yet they had to fight. The odds were against them, but their resolve was unbreakable. In the face of such overwhelming darkness, they stood together, ready to confront the shadow that threatened to consume them all. The Warden turned its baleful gaze upon Priya, a grotesque mockery of a smile spreading across its face. "So the lamb is brought to slaughter. You think you can defeat me, little one? You are nothing." Priya's hand instinctively went to the hilt of her dagger. Doubt gnawed at her resolve. What if she wasn't enough? What if she failed, and the world was consumed by darkness?
"Priya, look at me."
Meera's voice cut through the haze of fear that threatened to engulf her. Priya met her mentor's gaze. Meera's eyes, though filled with worry, held a spark of unwavering belief.
"You are the last eclipse breaker. The power of generations flows through you. You are not alone. We fight together."
For a fleeting moment, Priya's fear subsided, replaced by a surge of determination. She was the last line of defense, She couldn't afford to fail. The warden roared, charging towards them with unnatural speed, his eyes glowing with a malevolent light. Dev was the first to react, his instincts honed from countless battles kicking in. Dev, as S3. Now Priya, we must hold the line. He slammed his staff against the ground, a shockwave of energy erupting outwards, momentarily halting the warden's advance. The ground trembled under the force. Meera unsheathed a curved blade that hummed with an inner light, its glow cutting through the oppressive darkness. Meera, as S2. Now Priya, strike with all your might. She lunged at the creature, her movements fluid and precise, a whirlwind of silver against the encroaching darkness. Her blade danced with deadly grace. Priya shook off the last vestiges of her fear and followed suit, her heart pounding but her resolve unshaken. She moved with a speed and agility she hadn't known she possessed, her dagger finding gaps in the warden's defenses. Each strike was precise, aimed at the creature's weak points. The air crackled with energy as the talisman in Dev's staff pulsed brightly, weaving a protective barrier around them. The barrier shimmered, holding back the darkness. He chanted words of power, his voice a deep, resonant counterpoint to the warden's enraged roars. The incantation echoed, strengthening the barrier. But the warden was strong, fueled by the power of the eclipse, its strength seemingly limitless. Every blow they landed seemed to have minimal effect, their efforts barely slowing the monstrous figure. The battle raged on, their determination unwavering. Each clang of metal against the warden's hide, each deflected attack, chipped away at Priya's hope. She and Meera fought with everything they had, their movements synchronized, their strikes precise, yet the warden seemed to revel in their attacks, shrugging them off as if they were mere annoyances. It was a losing battle, and deep down they all knew it. The weight of despair was heavy. Meera, as S2. We need to get the urn to the altar. The ritual must be completed. The urn. Priya had almost forgotten about it in the heat of the battle. It sat on a pedestal behind them, emanating a faint, warm light, their only hope. But how could they reach it with the warden relentlessly hounding their every move? Meera yelled, her voice strained. She was tiring. Priya could see it. They couldn't keep this up much longer. Dev, his face pale with exertion, nodded grimly. He raised his staff high above his head, a blinding light erupting from the talisman. The warden roared in pain, momentarily blinded, but the reprieve was short-lived. Dev, as S3. Go! I'll hold it off! Priya, as S1. No! Priya cried, fear constricting her throat. They couldn't leave him, not to this monster. Meera, as S2. Go! There's no other way, Priya. It's up to you now. Meera shoved her towards the urn. As Priya ran, she could hear the sounds of battle behind her, the clash of metal, Dev's anguished cries. Guilt twisted in her gut, but she pushed onward, her hand outstretched towards the urn. This was her burden to bear, her destiny. Her fingers closed around the cool metal of the urn. It was surprisingly light, yet it pulsed with a latent energy that thrummed against her palm. Turning, she saw Meera fighting desperately, her movements faltering, her face a mask of pain. Dev lay crumpled on the ground, his staff shattered, the protective barrier gone. The warden loomed over Meera, a dark, triumphant silhouette against the eerie light of the eclipsed moon. It raised its claw ready to deliver the final blow. Priya, as S1. No! Priya screamed, her voice raw with terror and despair. The urn grew warm in her hand, pulsing in sync with the frantic beating of her heart. The world seemed to slow, the air crackled with energy. Would she be in time? To be continued?